My name is John Kopp, Jon Kopp. I live here in Tupper Lake, and I worked as a wildlife technician for the Bureau of Wildlife for close to 30 years, and I worked with all sorts of different animals and managing wildlife management areas and stuff like that. And I was always a trapper. All our family loves the woods. Okay, so my son is a avid hunter and fisherman, and everybody in the family is enjoys it. So we're always, and growing up in the Adirondacks, this is what you have. We live in a kind of like a bubble compared to the rest of the world. My connection with Garrett had more to do with trapping, and I had been trapping for years. And Garrett, when he was younger, he started a YouTube video, The Adirondack Trapper, and then I said, well, I can go out with you, maybe show you food tricks or something like that. And then the next thing you know, next year, I actually went back and I spent the whole winter, all from spring to fall, just trapping fur, and got back into it for a year. I'm not the type of guy who comes to the Adirondacks, walks up a trail, okay, and might sit on top of a mountain and just wonder to think that I had this terrific experience. I mean, I get into the Adirondacks, okay, forget about the trails, go through the woods, okay. I've learned about the animals and different habitats by trapping them and that type of thing, by fishing the streams. I think that people should get out there and do a variety of things. Collect mushrooms, okay, understand how things connect, trap, hunt, fish, do all that stuff, not just hike. You evolve into a little different understanding of the Adirondacks. I don't think that scientifically, okay, it's understood as well as maybe it was in the past. I think there's a lot of things missing. The practical Adirondacks, to speak of, where you actually go out and, you just can't learn about animals, okay, unless you really maybe trap them or really study them. You really don't understand how things are connected until you really spend a lot of time in the woods and do a lot of different things. And I remember the story I like to tell people is when I was trapping beaver for the state, nuisance beaver. And I remember going out and you had to clear the culverts and pull the dams. And I went on this one site there, and I'm just standing on the road. And I look down and I see a rock, and there's a little frog right next to the rock. And so I'm just sitting there, and on the rock there's a muskrat dropping. So as I'm looking at there, and I'm just watching it, not thinking much of anything, just looking at the frog, and this fly comes along, lands on the muskrat dropping, and the tongue shoots out from the frog and grabs that fly. And all of a sudden I get this realization that there's a relationship between muskrat droppings, frogs, and flies, okay? And you wonder what happens if there was no frog, if there was no muskrat, if there was, what I mean? My view of the Adirondacks is something that is always evolving. So once you build the house, you've taken away whatever habitat was there before, and you're creating another habitat. New things come into that habitat. So when I think about the Adirondacks, I don't think of it as something that is being preserved. I think of it as something that's evolving and changing all the time. I went to Paul Smith's. I graduated as a forester. I worked for the lumber company here, Drapers, for a couple of years, and I worked for DEC from fish hatcheries. But I worked in all the Adirondack counties. I worked in the programs. I worked in the peregrine restoration. I worked with a little bit in the eagle restoration project. I worked in, when I went for the Bureau of Wildlife, I worked in stocking, transferring fisher into the Catskills, where they established a population down there. All sorts of stuff. I worked with Hungarian partridge and all different programs over the lifespan. And so, when I came to the Adirondacks, I mean, you hardly ever saw gray squirrels, but now you see gray squirrels. You never saw ravens, okay? We stocked turkeys in the Adirondacks. We didn't have turkeys in the Adirondacks when I came. This is all in my lifetime. There was no moose in the Adirondacks. Well, now we have moose in the Adirondacks. There was people even believe that you had coyotes in the Adirondacks back in the 60s. They were kind of a new thing. So it's an evolution all the time. Everything is moving and changing. The one thing that you learn, okay, is how everything is connected. You know, people don't really realize just how connected everything is to everything else. And as a matter of fact, we had this great conversation there just the other day about this fungus, okay, that actually permeates the ground for miles and actually is the same species, okay? And it's kind of like, my perspective of the Adirondacks is kind of like getting on a train and watching the scenery change as you go from one city to the next.
What would you say that is an impact that you've had a legacy, you know?
Well, the years at the Bureau of Wildlife, okay, I was involved. It wasn't me, it was just me plus many other people, biologists and other technicians. And I think the restoration projects, the restoring the peregrine falcon to the Adirondacks, restoring the bald eagles, taking Fisher and restoring them to the Catskills, building wood duck boxes, because we had no wood duck habitat. You know, where you have no habitat, you build wood duck boxes and you bring wood ducks back. So, you know, you have that type of impact. So endangered species, bringing things back.
Get into a little bit for me, just the family history in the woods and why it's important to your family and where did that come from?
When you have plants and flowers and trees and animals and everything around you, okay, you're not living in macadam and pavement and stone and stuff like that. It's like, it's a natural thing. I think it's something that humans always live, but as we built our cities and our cities get bigger and bigger, okay, that perspective is gone from people who live in the city. That's, I think, when they come up, they're so absolutely amazed by hiking up a mountain and or actually blown away by nature. So they come out, but then they go back home. You know, they don't stay. Okay, but sometimes, as much as they might love nature and they really don't really get into nature, they go back to where they feel comfortable, back into the cities.
How do you have that connection to nature? Did somebody teach you? Like, how did you learn about, you know?
Well, I started out in the ocean down Long Island, so I spent all my summers basically on the beach or fishing in the bays. So I think that everybody has a natural connection, okay, with the outdoors. So it's there for everybody because it's part of your life. We come from that. That's where we evolved from. We you know, it's only been the past 100 years where it's been these huge cities and stuff like that where you know, people grow up in the city and really feel isolated and stuff. You know, I never really felt that way here, although some people do feel that way here. So it's kind of, everybody's a little different and reacts to things a little differently.
Would you say that there is something special about Tupper Lake or this area? You know,
Well, the natural resources. You're not going to find too many places in the world where you have so many lakes and streams and forests as you do in the Adirondacks. A lot of mountain ranges don't not have the ponds. It'd be a very rare thing, okay, where you have mountains and ponds to the extent that we have in the Adirondacks, and trying to find that in other places in the world. So you have a unique environment when it comes to that. I just regret the fact that sometimes we can't participate like we might have been able to participate 100 years ago in the Adirondacks.